Okay, today's date is April, what are we looking at, 6th, 2021. We're doing a 9-question Reachback for grade 8. If you haven't done these questions, press pause now, give them a go. Just for the record, this says part-to-part ratio and part-to-whole ratio. And then watch the rest of the video or fast forward to the parts that you want to see if you did correctly. The first question is an integer question. It says -6 take away -3, all divided by -2. So I'm going to solve the first part, simplify that numerator to get -3 divided by 2, which would then be as an answer. Is that a -2? I think it was, wasn't it? Was it -2 or +2? -2. So -3 divided by -2 is a +1.5. And you could write either in decimal form or in fraction form. Sorry, that question is worth 2 points. 1 point for showing the work and 1 point for having the correct answer. Question 2, 1 point for showing this work. So the first step you needed to simplify there was your brackets, and you got 4 times -5 minus -2. The second thing you needed to simplify was this. Now they might have that written down or they might have that written down. Either way, that's where the point, and your final answer is -18. That question is worth 3 points. 1 point for each step of work and 1 point for the correct answer. Question 3 is 3/5 divided by 4. Now obviously they could have used find a common denominator, but I don't think anyone here uses common denominator method for division of fractions. So more than likely, they kept the first fraction and changed the multiplication by the reciprocal, in which case they get the answer 3/20 as a final answer. 1 point for showing the work and 1 point for 3/20. Your next question is the addition of two fractions. Of course, we need to find a common denominator when adding fractions. So you get 9/15 plus 10/15. That's worth 1 point. And 1 point for the correct answer of 1 4/15. But if they stopped at just 19/15 and did not reconvert it into a mixed fraction, take a half point off. So 1 point for this work and 1 point for that whole work. So that's worth 2 points for this question. Your next question was really an exercise not so much in multiplication of fractions, but acknowledging that when multiplying fractions, it's easiest to cross-reduce to make your question easier. So if you did not cross-reduce, you ended up with 264 over 55660, is that right? You ended up with that, which then is a complete mess to try and reduce that to lowest terms. So if the person you're correcting had that as an answer and tried to reduce it to lowest terms, they just get 1 point for that answer. But if the person was smart enough to cross-reduce and say 11 over 55 is 1 over 5, and 24 over 12 is 2 over 1, and then multiplied it out to get 2 over 5, they get 1 point for the correct answer of 2 over 5 and 1 point for cross-reduction. If they simply had this as their answer and reduced it to this, they will receive 1.5 out of 2 because they should have acknowledged that cross-reduction is the easiest way to do that. Your next question is your algebra question, and here we have the idea of 3 is equal to 2, or that's not 2, that's 3. 3 is equal to 2 and -2x. So in this particular equation, we want to acknowledge what is our constant. Our constant is the value on the side of the variable that is your plus minus. So it's 2. I'm going to remove 2 from both sides to create 1 is equal to a -2x. That's worth 1 point. And then I'm going to divide both sides by -2 to get your final answer of x equals 0.5. So 3 points in total. 1 point for this, 1 point for this, and 1 point for the correct answer. 3 points in total. Your next algebra question says 4 take away a quarter of x is equal to -3. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract 4 to get rid of the constant. Over here you're going to have -7. Now over here, remember, there are 3 ways to write it. You can write it as a -quarter of x. You can write it as -x over 4. Or more appropriately, you can write it as a -quarter of x like that. Multiply both sides by -4. and x will equal a positive 28. 3 points for that question. Your next question gives you a picture of 4 stars and 6 circles and says write it as a P to P, which you should have known was a part-to-part ratio. So a part-to-part ratio, the first thing we do when we write a part-to-part ratio is decide what our first and second term of our ratio is going to be. I'm going to write down stars to circles, or you might have written down circles to stars. Now, if they put C to S, that's fine, or S to C, that's fine. But basically, you had to start with that. And then once you had that, your stars to circles would be 4 to 6, or 6 to 4. Now, it doesn't say to do this, but if you did do this, congratulations, because you should acknowledge that ratios can be just like fractions expressed in lowest terms. So in lowest terms, it would be 2 stars for every 3 circles, or 3 circles for every 2 stars. So we'll make this whole question worth 1 point. 1 point for having 4 to 6, and 1 point having, or sorry, half a point for having 4 to 6, and half a point for having words. And if they reduced it, just put a smiley face because they're brilliant people. And now for question 2, part to whole, you could write stars to all, or you could write circles to all. And once you define what your first and second term of your ratio are going to be, we could say 4 to 10 or 6 to 10. But because it's a part to whole ratio, what is the most appropriate form for ratios when part to whole are you write them as fractions. 4 out of 10 are stars, which means 40%. And 6 out of 10 are circles, which is 60%. So in this particular case, half a point for this, half a point for this, or this form. If they had this and they had this, it's gravy. It's only worth 1 point as well. 4 to 10 is fine, and in either form, you might have even had the word 2. That's acceptable as well, 4, 2, 10. But either one of those is acceptable for your answer. So that question was worth 2 points in total. And your last question gives you a rate and asks you to use proportional reasoning to solve the other rate or the equivalent rate. So remember, when we talk about this is a rate. And when a rate is equal to another rate, we call this a proportion, right? And there are 3 ways we can solve it. The first method is called your unit rate method. So what that means is I'm not going to solve it for 8 right away. I'm going to solve it for how much it costs for 1, otherwise known as a unit rate. And when I do that, I can divide both of my terms by 5 to figure out that it is that 20, how much is that? That's 24 cents, right? 24 cents for one of whatever it is I have. So if 5 of them cost me $1.20, then one of them cost me 24 cents. And if I multiply both by 8 now, $1.92, is that right? It would be $1.92 for 8. All right. So everything I showed here for work is the work that the person that solved it using unit rate needs to show. If they didn't show their work, but they have the correct answer of $1.92 for 8, they get a half a point. The whole thing is worth 1 point. If they showed their work correctly and they got the right answer, they get a full point. If they only have the correct answer but not the correct work, they get only half a point. The second method we've used is called the algebraic method. And we take your $1.20 for 5 and we say it's worth X, or an unknown amount, for 8. We said you can actually create an algebraic equation that can be used to solve the missing value in a proportion. We can multiply this way first. We get one side of our algebraic equation. Then we multiply the other way. 8 times $1 is $8. 8 times 20 cents, $1.60. $9.60. And once we have that algebraic equation, we can divide both sides by the coefficient to get X equals $1.92. Okay, and that's your second method. It's called the algebraic equation. It's half a point for the correct work, half a point for the correct answer. And our final method is simply the multiply and divide method. So if it's $1.20 for 5, how much for 8? If I consider this like I would an equivalent fraction, what did I multiply 5 by to get 8? Well, the answer is whatever 8 divided by 5 is. If I reverse it and say, well, what's 8 divided by 5? That'll tell me what our multiplier is. And without grabbing a calculator, because I can actually go, oh, if I go 8 divided by 5, it says 1.6. But I could have done that an easier way. If I think of this as a mixed improper fraction, then as a mixed fraction, it's that, which means as a decimal, it's this. So I could do it without a calculator, considering the division to be an improper fraction. Either way, I know that I'm multiplying 5 by 1.6 to get my answer, and therefore I would multiply 1.2 or $1.20 by 1.6, and it should give me $1.92, which it does. So again, 1 point for showing the multiplier of 1.6, and one or half point for the multiplier, half point for the correct answer. The last question is worth 3 full points, one for each method. I think the total score is out of 22. Is that right? I think so. Yeah, I might have made a mistake.